I've actually been with the service now since 1996. So I've been with more than half the 50-year journey. I'm very proud of that. In terms of the original QEA days when I started back in 1996 to now, there's been some dramatic changes. The most obvious ones being that back in 1996 we had one office in Brisbane. A few years later we opened a branch office in Beenleigh, and I was appointed the regional manager there actually. I was the first manager of that office, and then shortly thereafter an office at Maroochydore.
When I started back in 2002, the organisation was was incorporated under the old Aboriginal Councils and Associations Act of 1976, and in 2005, as part of this push for better governance, the board, in its wisdom, decided to reincorporate under the Australian Securities and Investments Commission.
In 2005, there was a tendering process, and we ended up taking on the southern region of Queensland. Went to 27 offices. Prior to that process, there were actually 11 mainland ATSILS in Queensland, and after that process there were only 2, us and our counterparts in Townsville. And then in 2008, the northern zone was also put out to tender, which we tendered for, and we were successful. So we took on all of mainland Queensland in 2008, which took us to 25 offices. And then a few years later, in 2011, we entered into a funding agreement with the Torres Strait Regional Authority and took on the Torres Straits. So that was the Torres Strait Islands and also the Northern Peninsula region. So that took us to 27 offices. So incredible growth from 1996, one office, to 27 offices by 2011.
When I started back in 2002, the organisation was in a very precarious position. Financially, we were under the leadership of a grant controller. When I started, I was given an ultimatum to turn the organisation around in 12 months, otherwise we'd be defunded. So I think it's not uncommon to many community-based organisations who, unfortunately, due to poor controls or financial mismanagement, have fallen into that trap. So by reincorporating under ASIC, at that time there were stronger controls in place. So it allowed us to make changes that were required to the operations, to the way the organisation was governed, to strengthen our internal control processes. So I think that's provided a good grounding, a good basis for the organisation to move forward and expand.
So in my role as a director, I've seen the organisation change significantly over the last sort of 14 to 15 years. So I think there's been a real focus on governance and ensuring that we're able to meet our governance responsibilities, and I think that has put ATSILS in good stead for the future.
Well, I've been the CEO since 2004. Prior to that, I was the former chair. So we took the organisation through a large growth. So obviously being established in 1972, we were put out to mainstream tender in 2004 by the Commonwealth Government. We were fortunate enough to secure the services from Brisbane up to Rockhampton, and then 3 years later had the services from Mackay upwards, just below the Northern Peninsula area in Cape York. So being here in that 18 years, we've gone over a massive growth from traditionally delivering just criminal law services to expand our services to criminal, civil and family law. A large focus on public sector monitoring, or formerly a death in custody monitoring role, unfortunately, because of the amount of deaths that take place, not only within hospitals, prisons, and recently again within police watch houses. So we changed our service delivery to look more upstream at the drivers and the root causes of why people came to our attention within the organisation. But not only that, we offer a through care service, which is a complete wraparound service provided in all the youth detention, adult, male and female correctional facilities, to work with our people to develop their own case plan, to assist them to reintegrate back into their own community. And I'll say it's a whitefellow word, reintegrate, but transition back onto country. But more importantly, for them to have access to the services that assist them in addressing the reasons why they've come into particularly the criminal system in the first place.
Initially it was probably, maybe 95% criminal law. Insofar as nearly all of us were doing criminal law, and you get the other odd inquiry, or which you could attempt to resolve if it wasn't too detailed or problematic, because just, sheer limited resources. But since that time, there's been a family team, there's been a civil team, and it's given significant depth across the board, akin to other stakeholders who also might offer loosely similar like services. Whereas initially it was just crime, where now, for instance, child safety is very real and at the forefront, and other things of that nature.
Watching the organisation grow, when I first started, there were only 3 offices here in Brisbane, one in Maroochydore and one in Beenleigh. We had a budget of about $2.7 to $3 million. And then we have since grown. In 2005, we expanded to cover from Rockhampton down, so from 3 to 18 offices in 2005. And then in 2008, we took over the whole part of the state, the northern side of the state, from Cairns down. In 2011, we took over the Torres Strait. So watching the organisation expand from a staff complement of about 37 to 252 staff members that we have today is an incredible sense of satisfaction and achievement, and it shows there is a need for us in society. We are serving, or we are doing good in what we're doing.
So as I said, I was formerly the chairperson of the QEA, which was underneath the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Commission, or ATSILS. Over that period of time and coming in here, we were a very small organisation back then. We had 3 offices, around $3 million in funds and 30 staff. And if we look at today, we've got 25 offices, some 250 staff, and a budget in the mid 30 million. So the organisation has grown over a long period of time, but we've remained solution focused to the challenges, not focused on the problems. We've remained focused to the solutions to grapple not only with the high rates of incarceration, which I may say is per capita in the world. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in Australia are locked up more per capita than any other First Nations on the planet. So the thing for me in working with the organisation, it wasn't hard to see what needed to be done. We had a number of reports, particularly the Stratton report, which identified some of the business challenges the organisation had. The opportunity to come in and apply some business practices and principles. We talk about Western business practices and principles in a cultural way. Was quite challenging at first, but what I can say is about leadership in this organisation, which has really, I suppose, been the benchmark, is I have a couple of cliches. Don't bring me a problem unless you've got a solution, otherwise you're a part of the problem. And leaders can lead and leaders can be led. Not only have we got a fantastic board of directors who provide the strategic direction within the organisation, I've got an amazing leadership team that works off that philosophy, and not just the executive within the organisation, but all staff across the state. At times, I don't even think they realise how important what they do every day benefits our people. But secondly, how do we actually take the organisation forward without leaving anyone behind? That's one of the challenges that we're facing moving forward.